Welcome to the first episode of the Vital MX Post-Race Show of 2025. We are here because the 2025 Monster Energy AMA Supercross series is finally underway. Anaheim 1 is in the books, and to be truthful, it delivered exactly as most of us would have liked. It was as competitive as we had hoped, and now we have a plethora of stories that have been opened up as round 2 in San Diego looms. We're going to discuss everything that happened at Anaheim 1 and what it means for San Diego in this episode of the podcast, which is now available on video. Yes, every single week, the Vital MX Post-Race Show, which, if you're unfamiliar, this is a podcast that recaps each round of the Super Motocross World Championship, will be available on YouTube. So, something new, something extra. And if you enjoy this, let us know in the comments. Let us know how you would like it to be better. Always looking for ways to improve and evolve, hence the introduction of YouTube. I'm your host, Lewis Phillips, and it would be remiss of me to go any further without thanking DeCal Works, Fox Racing, and Yoshimura. This is the best that I can say about our supporters, our sponsors. Do we align with the best? Well, each of our sponsors won at the weekend, and that in itself, I believe, is quite a powerful statement. Of course, everyone who listened last year is well aware that Chase Sexton had DeCal Works graphics bolted to his bike each and every week, and he does again this year. So whilst all the bike has changed for Chase Sexton this winter, the graphics have remained constant. I think that's a crucial detail to focus on. I'm joined by Michael Lindsay, as I will be 99.9% of the season. There's probably going to be one round or two where he does not appear. But Michael Lindsay, how are you?
Wow, just setting me up for instant failure already. When you were saying this is the best we could do when we were talking about sponsors, I thought you were about to say this is the best I can do in pronouncing Yoshimura.
No, I almost had a stroke when I was trying to process that. It's difficult. Are you excited?
Yes, of course. A1 definitely did not go the way I expected. I already realized compared to our previous show, there's a couple things that I've already drastically taken out of context and messed up on, which is always great. But that's why we go race dirt bikes. That's why it's, we don't just hand out trophies before the season. At least storyline wise, it sets up a lot of things because there is, kind of typical of A1, and things could change really quick over the next couple of races, but right now it's a little more wide open than I expected. There's a lot of positive points I feel like to talk about with many of the top riders, and a few negatives that kind of, for some, that sort of balance out the field and at least make things interesting for the next couple of rounds, see where things start to sell out. But I will say I wish San Diego was tomorrow, because I'm that interested in where a lot of this is going to play out.
Yeah, well, I believe that we all shared the same sentiment that had Jett Lawrence won Anaheim 1 in the same fashion that he did last year, we probably would have lacked some excitement because we would have been in a position of, here we go. But instead, rather than here we go in a rather dull and uninterested tone, it is here we go. We've got a race on our hands. Because, sure, if you are a Jett Lawrence supporter, hard backer, you would say crashed in the first turn, crashed again after the sand, everything will be fine. And there is some truth to that. Everything will be fine. But I look at the timed qualifying sessions, I look at the heat races, and I am very convinced that Chase and Eli specifically are right there with Jett. If not above at this point. We know that Jett is dealing with setup issues with a Honda. That was long reported throughout the off-season, spoken about in Paris. There was a quiet confidence, I felt like, in mid-December that it was going to be sorted. And I don't believe we're there now. Even if you look at the mistakes that Jett and Hunter made in the main event, very similar. From what I hear, they're struggling with the rear end. Both crashed at the end of the whoops, entering the sand section. I don't believe that this issue, or this widespread issue, I shouldn't use singular, because I do believe there are multiple factors here. I don't believe that this is we'll test this week, and he comes out at San Diego, and just, it's all perfect. This is amazing. I think this takes time. Fair?
Well, at least at the moment, they're definitely keeping things open. They were supposed to go back to Florida this week. I spoke to Hunter after the race, and I was just kind of I was like, hey, very blunt, like, what does this look like for you guys over the next week or two? And I mean, one of them was canceled flights home or staying in California for the next week or two because they want to get as much done as efficiently as possible. And I agree with you. I mean, it's very easy to see rear end instability in the whoops being a big factor. But a big one, it's more noticeable on Jett, is even just like chatter and overall front end comfort. Any of the times Jett's on screen, particularly in the main when the tracks start to go away, like coming out of corners, the bike's just deflective and very responsive to everything it sees on the surface. It kind of feels like, and it was just, you could see Jett just kind of getting knocked around all the time. So I think both ends of the bike, they're going to be pretty busy at the moment. And it's a tough one because I don't know how much of it is, it's very easy to go, oh, they got this brand new bike. They were praising this brand new chassis, etc. But it's supposed to be extremely close to their outgoing works chassis. There's also little things we don't know about. There's updates to suspension packages. Both KYB and Show are going through some big overhauls in the US. So I don't know what's going on with componentry. Some stuff like that could be kind of throwing them for a loop. So I don't know if I'm going to fully 100% throw the blame on it's the new frame. There's a combination of factors there that just don't seem to be gelling for the boys at the moment.
I wonder if this is a situation where actually on the East Coast they did get somewhere towards a level of comfort. So this is a West Coast specific problem, hence cancelling flights back to Florida to stay West Coast. Maybe that's putting more of a magnifying glass on this situation. And of course, we have seen this time and time again with riders who spend all off-season in Florida on the East Coast, come to Anaheim, nothing works.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to it later, but 250s, I mean, Jordan Smith said the same thing, like, man, the bike just works different out here. And for this big push, and, it's been going on for years, but I think it goes still through the ebbs and flows a little bit where, you have Florida or Georgia, wherever we want to call kind of that southeast kind of area of riders that get really hooked on being there the whole season. And then you come around to A1 and there's definitely a little like, we're not quite there. We end up backtracking. We end up having to spend a week or two in California. At least for a lot of these guys, this opening west swing isn't as long as it's been in the past, with only 4 rounds before we bounced east for the first time. So it negates, if you come out a little weak on the hard pack, the West Coast, the edginess in the beginning of the season, downside is you have a shorter amount of time to figure it out before you eventually have to loop back to it. But in the other end, it's also you get away from it quicker. So maybe you can kind of damage limitation what it does to your season.
This is the first time that Jett Lawrence has finished outside of the top 10 since his 4th Supercross ever.
Wow.
In 2020. So yeah, that in itself points to how sensitive this situation is, because Jett Lawrence last year with a first turn crash, he didn't crash, but equivalent to a crash, and the crash after the whoops, he still comes back to 7th, I think.
Yeah.
There's no way in hell that Jett Lawrence finishes outside the top 10 barring a significant issue. And truthfully, and we'll get to Chase and Eli and everyone in a minute, but truthfully, I felt like his frustration was very, very clear after, both before the second crash and afterwards. I felt like he looked uninterested. He looked frustrated. His body language to me looked like a rider who, if he could, he would pull off. He looked that just unimpressed with the situation. Now, I will say, to counter that, let's say 6 laps from the end, I did see a bit of pep in his step. He started to maybe pick it up. So maybe he started to maybe loosen up and let go of the situation a little bit. But in the first half, I felt like he just looked beaten, to be honest.
Particularly after the sand crash, like I said, when he got up, I mean, you look at him, or after the first incident, him and Eli are in a somewhat similar situation, and you see the progress Eli is making. Jett was making okay progress after the start issue. But then, the sand crash just at the end of the whoops just kind of completely negated any forward movement he had for a little while. I mean, at one point he was in 15th behind, it's like Brees or Freeze for a notable amount of time. I'm shooting on the floor, and I kind of lap after lap, and I'm like, man, he's still kind of in the same spot, and helps towards the end. Guys get tired. You get some easy passes, per se, with the skill and talent level that Jett has, picking off guys in that range. Even when the bike setup isn't good, he can still just kind of squeak it out a little bit. So a little bit of recovery. But to your point, yes, you take Jet where he's comfortable, there's no way he doesn't get through farther. I mean, again, prime example, look how far Eli made it through the pack tonight. Like, that's where it's very easy to go, man. If things are different, Jet's, 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th range, like if he's comfortable.
Had Jett not crashed for a second time, that would have been very, very interesting, because you cannot really make the Eli comparison because they were separated. But had Jett not crashed a second time, that would have both shot a massive spotlight on Eli and Jett. Someone would have made a statement there. But instead it's kind of settled, and you could argue that Jett would have done the same as Eli without a crash. No evidence against that. But that was going to be fascinating. One final point on Jett before we move on to Chase. You mentioned front end feel in the switchbacks, the multiple flat straights that we had, a lot of those, a lot of head shake, a lot of twitchiness. I looked at the track map for San Diego, and we have similar flat straight vibe. I'm not sure if that's new for 2025. I feel like we've not had this many flat straights before. But looking at the San Diego track map, my first reaction was any issues that Jett and Hunter had in Anaheim will also come to the forefront and be magnified in San Diego. So that will be interesting. Not sure how we got down the Jett rabbit hole so quickly, but hey-ho. Let's move on to the winner, who really made quite a statement. And I said this in the preview show. I said this countless times throughout the off-season. This was the most important Anaheim one in history, because if Jett had won, it would have immediately burst the balloons of Chase and Eli and Cooper. If Chase or Eli could win, it would immediately bring them up and silence any doubts from a drab 2024. And I do genuinely believe that this is what this has done for Chase and Eli, because although he didn't win, it was a moral victory. And even going back to the start of the day, I got some heat for this on X, but Chase was the fastest in free practice with 2 of the fastest lap times. And yes, it's free practice. But I felt like that was enough for him to sit back and go, okay, this is different. I can move on with my life now. Forget about 2024. And talking to him after the race, he confirmed that. Like, yes, it is just free practice, but that was massive for him heading into the rest of the program because he felt a sense of ease. And I think that was evident in his riding. Was he better than 2023? Potentially, maybe a refined version of that, but I think you could argue this was the most dominant win of his career, Supercross-wise.
I don't know if I'd say I think I've seen more dominant in 23, particularly just because of the shuffle at the beginning, the fact that Jett and Eli weren't there at the start. It's hard for me. Like, if that gap is there with Eli and Jett being second and third, then yes, I agree with you. I still think some of the peaks of 23 performance outshine this. I will remind you that when I did this show with you in 2023, I think every week you're like, this is the most amazing ride I've ever seen.
But no, this is not the most amazing ride I've ever seen, but I feel like this might be his most... Maybe dominant isn't controlled? Commanding?
I think
commanding. I like commanding.
That's what I was going to get to. I think 23 is still peak. My opinion, when you compare it to the rest of the field, the intensity of a few things, I still think maybe peak 23 Chase is a little more just pure raw, but this Chase is a very balanced Chase. We have a lot of consistency. Outside of, even when Chase has been winning races, no offense, I have those moments where you're watching him race and you see something happen. The only aha moment I had was when, who was it? Mitchell Harrison, somebody got together. Mitchell slid back into the middle of the rhythm. Pretty late in the race, Chase almost landed, had to eject or exit stage right to not get into Mitchell. There was like one other time, just that little mistake, nothing that really lap to lap made me like pucker a little bit, where Chase 23 would make me do that. Even when he was out front and in control, there was still little like moments where I guess the best compliment I can give to this is the race almost lap to lap Chase didn't stand out as much in this race because it was just so controlled. And
I like that. I think that's good.
He repeatedly did the same thing every lap. So when I look back at the race, even though I was on 4, I don't have these moments where I'm like, oh, this stood out, because it was all just so solid every lap. There wasn't big highs and lows.
Yeah, I was equally as impressed at the fact that after he stalled it, he rebuilt a gap to Kenny almost instantly. I was really genuinely quite shocked that
Within a lap and a half, it was already back.
Yeah, like I couldn't believe it. It was but that points to mental stability. The fact that a mistake happened and he was like, okay, back to work. Which I think 2 years ago, we're almost disregarding 2024 because it's irrelevant to this data. But 2 years ago,
It's the odd man out.
it would have sparked a bit of panic, and no, there was none of that. The heat race was also superb. Helped, well, not, no, I was going to say helped by Prado a little bit, but not at all, because Prado was solid in second. He didn't even have heat. So if you're Chase Sexton and KTM, this is a dream start, especially after 2024. Chase said to me after the race that he changed a couple of clickers all day, whereas Supercross last year, there was not a single round where the forks were not off the bike at some point. So that is quite a difference, especially at Anaheim. Like, Chase is a guy, he spent 80% of this offseason in Florida. So if there were going to be issues, you would believe that they would be magnified at Anaheim. I believe we have something here.
Yeah. One real positive to having, of course, this is such an obvious thing to say, but one huge positive to being settled in early in the seasons. Yes, you can look at it and go, Jett, Eli, certain guys can figure things out, close that gap. It gives also Chase some leeway as the rest of the field gets their stuff together and tries to mount a charge against him. He also has a little bit of freedom to maybe try things, because they always have that settle back point of, like, if they have a round where they kind of chase their tail, like, okay, we started the season great. Let's just go back to A1 setting. Let's go back to, whatever. He probably won't get too lost in these opening couple rounds, but he'll always be able to kind of take a step back and have a very solid base, where guys that start the season lost have to make progress, because you don't want to fall back to where you started at, because you're already not happy where you started off at.
Yeah, that was also why I felt that Anaheim 1 was massive for Chase and Eli, because if this hadn't gone well, Chase would be at the test track today, taking the forks off again, etc., etc. But instead, there will be a sense of calm. And hilariously, or not hilariously, maybe that's the wrong word, but hilariously, the roles have reversed, because it's now the Honda HRC guys who are taking forks off, swapping shocks. It's disarray over there. But that is just the nature of the sport. I said this to Chase after the race. I was like, 2024, it was you. 2025, it's them. Like, next year, it'll be someone else. That is just the way it goes. Like, everyone has a year where it just doesn't work.
This is very much looking into the future, kind of just guessing, but let's take Jett and Hunter situation. When you talk to him about the new bike, the situation, there's all quotes, man, we really didn't get started on this till December, this and that, and that's a lot of that is self inflicted, and they're aware of it. I'm not saying anything that isn't obvious here. Between doing destinations, the Aussie, the money races off season, just having a very, very busy schedule. I hear it get quoted a lot by them. Not a throwing it as an excuse. It's just like, yeah, we did this, almost like, I hate to say it's like we did this to ourselves, but they definitely are very aware of it. If, end of the season, Chase is holding the number one plate, Jett and Hunter both struggle all season with bike setup, kind of lost. Do you foresee it changing the way they go about this next off season? Because they've been really busy, it feels like, for like 2 off seasons in a row, almost 3, and they, going into 24, everything worked out. But if it doesn't work out this year, does that get called into a major question?
No, because I do believe it's a perfect storm of bike and busyness. If they get to a point where they're settled on the bike by the end of this year, then there's no reason that the off-season would be turbulent. If they still haven't figured out the bike and they go into the off-season like, we have work to do, then yes, they're going to have to make drastic changes. But perhaps that was a bit of overconfidence. Signing up for all of those races with a new bike, perhaps that was a bit of overconfidence, being like, it's fine, we've got it, when in fact they didn't have it. And they will do soon. Don't get me wrong. Jett especially, he'll win by Tampa. I think that's probably fair. Do you think he wins sooner than Tampa?
Yeah. I mean, they could make a lot of progress literally this week. I think he wins before Tampa. But
this is my point. This is not just a case of Jett needs to fix the bike and he wins. Like, Chase and Eli are so good right now. Comparable to Jett at his very, very best. I genuinely believe that. I mean, we saw it in timed qualifying. So it's not a case of fix a bike and win. It's fix a bike and then you have to go toe-to-toe with these guys who are significantly better than they were last year.
See, I always play that. Like, I'm not the... I seem to always end up in this situation. I'm just not the biggest believer in these massive valleys and gains between guys. Like, they fix the bike, Jett will be right there with them. He is that level of guy. I have no question at it. So the reason I say I win for Tampa, it may not happen. If they figure out the bike this week, he'll be right in there with them next week, and it's not going to take much for...
Oh, yeah, I'm saying he'll be right there in him with them.
Yeah. But with the win, no, I'd have all the confidence in the world. You put Jett in the situation to go toe-to-toe with him, and he's very, very strong chance of the win. So, no, I don't think it takes much for him to readjust into that situation. I think it's just solely on the bike. I also think his attitude is... I hate to say this, I feel like we call him kind of lackadaisic a bit and this and that. He's serious, don't get me wrong, but I feel like he can shut out the bad week. Like, if you click him in, I don't think he goes into the next week worrying like, it's better, but what if? Like, I think he just shows up, puts out the last week, and goes racing. So I think the win comes before Tampa. Also, not shocking if it doesn't. If it doesn't, I think of this whole group, your Eli, your Chase, your Jett, kind of these top contenders. If one of them starts the season with a bad bike but has the opportunity to come back from it and mentally put it out and string out some wins once they get it fixed and put themselves back in the conversation, I feel like Jett has potentially the strongest chance of that group. So I'm not slamming the, oh shit button yet, but because I think he can come back from this just fine.
I think Chase wins the title.
Oh, we're going after A1. You're just going straight.
To be honest, I thought it in the off season, but I was too scared to say it because I get a lot of shit.
Now you're okay with it after one race?
Yeah, because I said this to someone after the race. Just, I'm not sure what it will take for people to realize that I may actually have insight and know what I'm like. I said this to someone. Just from texting Chase, not about motocross stuff, the way that he was talking in the off-season, I was like, something's different. Like, you can tell, like, even watching, I didn't interview him on press day, but watching him talk to people on press day, I was just watching him and I was like, something's good here. Like, you can just feel that confidence from a person, can't you?
Yeah.
So
I think his percentage chance is way higher than it's been pretty much any 450 season. I do agree with you, but again, that's
any 450 season?
Yeah, it's Supercross.
Better than the year he won the title?
I think he looks more calm, like collected, and to his own admission.
I said, is this the best Chase Sexton ever? And you shouted at me.
I think you tried to say, was this the most dominant performance?
Well, maybe I should have said commanding, but I feel like as far as him riding away and have like Atlanta 2023 stands out to me. Off the top of my head, there were a lot of races. Salt Lake that year I don't count because everyone was injured. Literally, so that doesn't count. But Atlanta stands out in my mind. But apart from that, like as far as like, oh, where's Chase? Oh, he's 70 million seconds ahead. Like, I don't feel
what was his gap at the win?
I honestly don't know, but I can pull that up. 4 seconds, so not quite 17 million.
I was say, it was controlled, but it was. Okay, so you're trying to spin it right now. Let's finalize this. I think this is the most well-rounded Chase, so that's why I say I think he has the best shot at a 450 Supercross title that he's had.
I agree. That's why I've literally got a pop-up on the screen that I wrote that says, "Is this the best Chase Sexton ever?"
Yes, I think it's the most rounded and best. I did not, to answer your original question, I didn't think it was the most dominant performance I've seen from him, but I do think
commanding. I switched the word to commanding. I like commanding.
There you go. Because it was funny. One of the things I brought up with him, about Jade being back with him is, I said, it hasn't been that many years you guys have been apart. I'm not saying you're like a ton older, but I'm like, Jade was with you when you were winning 250 titles, and I said, no offense, like having some pretty big emotional moments. I remember you kind of had some highs and lows of how you would deal with stuff. So I'm like, it's got to be nice having Jade, somebody who's been there and seen that with you and seen that growth, but also knows when it does happen, maybe how to deal with you. And Chase laughed. He goes, I definitely don't have him as much anymore, but he goes, trust me, I get pretty emotional sometimes. Well, but I think that pairing's really good because Jade's been there with him through a lot of that early growth.
I said to him after the race, I feel like, are we less emotional this year? And he said, yeah. And then he looked at me and went, I think you're less emotional this year. And I was like, no.
I just don't have a lot of energy. Trust me, you'll see it soon.
I was like this close to the edge.
To jumping? Whoa.
But no, great. And you know what? This is going to make San Diego fascinating but also put some pressure on Chase, because if Chase can come out and win again, then it's super statement. Yeah. Not that he needs to, like a second, third, fourth would equally be fine when no one thinks this was a flash in the pan. But if you want to cement this to the nth degree, you come out and win San Diego, and then there's very little room for anyone in the world to question it. Because I do see that in the comments, people saying, oh yeah, you think everything's great when Jett and Eli crashed. And it's like, so what better way to silence that than come out in San Diego and win? Ken Roczen was second, and no one knew anything about Ken Roczen all off-season. His quietest ever, perhaps. His qualifying was terrible. He qualified 14th, which was the lowest he had qualified since round 5 of 2018, which was 2,593 days ago. So that wasn't a great start. But then he came out and did what Kenny does. And that's Kenny. And he's maintained his streak. This is his 11th year in 450s, and every single year, no matter what's been going against him, he has podiumed at least once in the first 3 rounds. So well done, Kenny.
Speaking to him before the race on press day, he had the same death flu that you and a few other guys have had. He said he was basically useless the last 2 weeks. Like, family was sick. Actually, that's his wife and kids were not at the race this weekend for that reason. So he was definitely just kind of, just getting back into riding this last week. Just did talk about some of the changes this offseason. 2 biggest ones he quoted, of course, was they have a factory transmission now, which he said was actually a pretty big difference in certain areas. And then switch on suspension. He's working with REP. Mark Johnson is actually who he worked with when he won his titles at KTM. And he said that's just been, Kenny's such a tinker at times. He's always talking about trying stuff. He said this is the most settled he's been with the bike for a while. Part of that sounds like because him and Mark know each other really well. There's a lot of trust there. Kenny when they reset, Kenny commented of just riding the bike a lot and not wanting to change things and kind of reset what he was looking for and working on that relationship. So he just seems very settled in a way, just not frantic like maybe he's been the last year or two. Not that he's usually spun out, but he's trying to make these gains, and he just seems very settled with where he's at.
Do you have any reason to believe this year will go different for Kenny in any way? Or are you just this is Kenny, he podiums, he'll podium more? Okay, let me be more specific. Do you now believe he wholeheartedly wins a race?
That did cross my mind because I remember he was amongst, we go to the default for Tomac Webb, Lawrence, Sexton for race wins is what we said. And then, I think there will be a 5th, maybe a 6th. I would say of the group, just going off A1, yeah, Kenny, again, commanding Chase. Chase has a small mistake, but only being 4 seconds off. Great sprint speed as usual early in the race from Kenny, but also good longevity. He had little spurts to kind of try to close the gap a couple times. I think we get a Kenny win this year. I think he continues getting a streak of getting a win.
Do you think that overall, though, this is a better Kenny? I don't mean championship, but maybe more in the picture? Or, I mean, let's be honest, last year was better than people realised. So to top that would be quite an achievement.
I'd say just from first glance and speaking to him, I think we have a good chance of even improving over last year, over the run of the title.
Jason Anderson was 3rd, and this crossed my mind. I should really look into this because it would fascinate me, but I honestly don't know how you would. Jason Anderson was 3rd, and early on, Jason and Jorge Prado were 1-2. And oh my, when was the last time that Kawasaki ran 1-2 in a 450 main event? It was a very odd sight to see. A lot of people who I asked said that surely Tomac and Joey did it that in 2019, but I'm not convinced. So it must have been Villapoto and Weimer in 14, 13, 12. So, somewhere in there, because Weimer had a lot of podiums. somewhere in there, Weimer and Villapoto must have done it.
I'd say very earlier. Weimer was really good his first 450 season, pretty decent seconds. I'd say early in that era. Maybe.
Yeah, I'd say 2012. I think 2012. Because 2012 was his first podium, and 2012 there were a lot of injuries. So 2012, I've said this many times, 2012 was the worst year for injuries in the history of the sport. Never forget.
Was that the one where we had like 6 factory riders left at the end of the season?
That's the one where Ryan Villapoto won the championship, and then he himself got injured. Like, even the champion couldn't escape it. But yeah, that was a sight to see, and really, was quite a statement, I guess, on Kawasaki's behalf. But Jason Anderson was on the podium last year at Anaheim 1. So I guess similar question. Are you just like Jason Anderson? He podiums on the West Coast tracks. This is more of the same. Or did you see anything that made you think this is going to be different?
I'm out on the Jason one a little bit at the moment. Not saying things haven't changed. Kind of between some of the guys didn't start good, seeing how far Jorge ended up going backwards. Not saying backwards in a bad way. We'll get to him. There was some very impressive moments there. I don't know. Jason's finish to me is good, but I'm not wowed. I don't know if I'm buying into the reborn Anderson hype. I know he's it's a big year for him in terms of contract wise, future of his career, a few things. I'm not saying that he hasn't improved, but I don't know based off this performance if I'm sold. Like, okay, conversation we just had about Kenny. I'm not coming out here going Anderson's winning a race yet this year. Not saying he won't. I'm just not sold on it after A1.
Could you argue that considering he was ahead of Chase and Kenny, it was actually a little disappointing that he didn't beat either of those? Like, if you,
I did enjoy his opening lap or two, just like with the incident with Eli sliding out, like how Anderson capitalized on it. Considering his start, like he was almost as bad as Jett. He was right up in there getting caught up in that tough block. So Jason made hay well shine. Like he really put it together the first lap or two. But yes, because he ended up drifting back and getting passed by the Lobos and losing that toe, it's a little like, it's okay.
Yeah, like if pre-race you lay it out and say Eli and Jett are out of the picture, Jason will start first. It's Anaheim 1, it's West Coast, etc., etc. I think in that setting, you're like, oh, that's Jason's best shot at a win.
That's kind of the problem. Like, okay, this was a really good scenario for him, and it didn't quite happen. And you look at like, okay, Jett's gonna figure this out more. Eli gets, doesn't slide out the first lap. He's competitive. You think Webb will get better. It's hard to. Jason's somebody that's like, I hate to say it. I doubt, like, does Jason tend to get better over season? Like, do you see these improvements? Because I see guys around him where I can argue that. So if he doesn't get it done when the opportunity presents itself this early, that's where I'm kind of like, not saying it's not going to happen, but I was like, yeah, there went an opportunity that it definitely could have happened, and he didn't quite capitalize on it. Like I said, I give him props. He really capitalized the opening lap, considering how bad his start went. So that was a huge positive, but just didn't finish it off.
A quiet fourth for Cooper Webb, but he moved forward from 9th, and I think that is overlooked. But to go from 9th to 4th is good, fine. I think that's
4th, 2 positions better, I think, they did at A1 last year, 2 or 3.
But wasn't he last year? He was in a position to be on the podium and crashed on the wall jump, hip jump thing. But yeah, I think that was fine for Cooper Webb. No reason to be concerned. And then Eli Tomac, who was on pole position, topped timed qualifying for the first time since round 11 of 2022. So that was a statement in itself. And not only did he top timed qualifying, he topped both sessions. So left little room for doubt. His start in the heat race wasn't great. That was concerning. His start in the main event was great. That was less concerning. I would not have expected him to come through the field as well as he did and get to 5th. I feel like that was amazing. So overall, you can be gutted about the result, but I feel like 10 out of 10, great Anaheim 1. This is all amazing. We move on. I feel like Eli right now has zero doubt in his mind.
Yep. Fair, and I would say not to rain on Chase's parade in a way, but of the two of them, Eli's performance actually silences more doubt for me, because I believe coming into the season, I would say, and I would say most people, I think even with Chase's struggles in 24, I think it was easier to put belief in Chase. Again, we've seen Waste Cape, like, part of it's youth, just age. Like with Eli, there's question marks. Like, could he get back there? Like, is it even possible anymore? So I think, in a sense, Eli may have silenced more doubters than Chase based off his performance at A1, even though Chase's was the win, if that makes sense. Not, again, I'm not. It's because I almost had more belief. I had more belief in Chase coming into the season than Eli. Again, when we did our title thing, I had to pick a throwaway, and I actually picked Eli as a throwaway because there was some unknown. So.
Okay, just picking up on some Chase hater vibes here, but never mind.
Again, I just stated to you that I believed in him more than Eli coming this season.
Okay, we'll watch this developing story as the season progresses.
Do you have like a little, when we're doing the podcast, do you have little like notes and check marks where you put where like maybe Chase slander, question mark? Chase slander, question mark?
We will watch this. Are you concerned about Eli's starts? Because the heat race wasn't good, but the main event was. So that's 50-50. Whereas Chase, who also came in with similar questions about starts, had 2 solid starts. So where do you fall on the 50-50 of Eli?
I mean, it was just nice to see one. I'll take it at this point.
Honestly, that's a fair point.
That's a fair point with Eli. I'll just take it. Let's see some more. Like I said, Chase's is definitely, especially with Jett's issue, like Chase's back-to-back good starts is huge for him, but even seeing it a little bit with Eli. But overall, I thought it was just interesting to watch Eli. Just the way he carried himself all day. Like I said, there's a lot more quiet, like just confidence the way he's carrying himself. Bike setup's unique. I talked to him on press day. He's gone away from hybrid fork back to full air fork, which he's done multiple times throughout his 450 career, being even with Yamaha since the hybrid existed. And then, like some people mentioned, he's suspension wise at Yamaha. There's also John Yamada, who's been at KYB a long time. He's bounced between a lot of projects. He's working with Eli a little bit more now. So a little bit different change up there on some of his bike setup stuff, getting a little bit different than like Webb and J Coop. I believe Webb and J Coop are both on hybrid. Actually, Webb told me he hasn't changed his suspension since the middle of last year. They tested some this offseason, and he defaulted to his, I think he said it was his round 6 setup from last year, and he just loves it and just thinks it's solid.
I wanted to put some attention on the post-race interview that Eli did with JT on TV. Dare I say, that was the best that Eli Tomac has ever come across in the history of the sport. Honest, little bit funny. Just, I liked that. In that whole interview, I was like, that's great, Eli. Like, wow. Did you see it?
Oh, no, I know what you're talking about. No, okay. It was just very genuine, nice and short to the point, but just nice little insights, nice rounded character from him.
Previously, Eli would have, like JT would have said, not the result you wanted. Eli would have gone, yep, we'll be back next week. And then left it there. But there was some real, like, I don't want to say emotion.
I like the didn't respect A1 comment. I've been here.
Yeah, like that's cool.
Respect it. I was like, yes, there we go.
Yeah, like that's cool. Like that was good. Well, like that. I feel like I'm happier with that than I was his ride, which is saying something because the ride was great. I got one more Eli comment based off talking to him on press day. I know this is his last full season, but God, he won't commit. When you talk to him about it, he's like, No, I was just going to say that. I was of the opinion of this when the PR dropped, and I'm even more so now. The way that they keep emphasizing last full season, his plan, unless this goes terribly, is to race 2026 Supercross. 100%. Because you don't emphasize last full season. Every single place that has been communicated, there has been emphasis, I'll make it, on full season.
Yeah.
Like, you don't do that unless you have plans to do a abbreviated season for next year.
And that's why I said to him, sadly, we lost the audio on the first part of my conversation with him, but I basically said, I know this is going to be annoying. Everybody's asking us, but I said, it's last full season. I'm like, this has got to be hard to walk away from. And he said it. He said he's having a very, because I just mentioned the last couple of years, I'm like, I said, it's so weird to have a date in a sense on your year. Because I said, you've just been doing these year-to-year deals, enjoying yourself, keeping it kind of open-ended. And he said it's getting he said it's getting harder to walk away from.
Well, understandably, when you ride like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's cool. Like, again, you get to pro motocross. Enjoy this. If you're a Supercross fan, unless something goes bad this season, Eli Tomac's going to be sitting in that press conference at 2026 A1. Come on.
I would bet money on it at this point. Speaking of which, you can now bet on SMX, and I believe if you bet $20 on Chase, you won $120? Something like that.
He had really good odds. So did I remember him and like Kenny had really
if
good
Kenny
odds.
had won, some people would have been winning some serious money. I think Hunter was $20 equaled $2,000. And I think Kenny was even higher than that. Anyway, Justin Barcia was 6th, and let's not forget just how terrible 2024 was for Justin Barcia. So similar to Chase, similar to Eli, similar to all these other guys, I feel like Barcia can take a deep breath and be like, okay, this is different, this is better. So he's also in that category of relief as we exit A1.
Yeah, I felt bad even though just because Eli got him on the last lap, saw him right after he got off the track, pulled up next to Whoops, took his helmet off, and he was just kind of from and you could just see him kind of taking it all in. And there was part of me wanted to pat him on the back on the way by and be like, dude, this is such an improvement. But, typical racer mentality, you could see him kind of conflicted with the result. It seemed like he was conflicted looking at his emotion a little bit right afterwards because it's like so close to having top 5. But yeah, after one of the absolute worst seasons of his career, great start to the year for him. Again, like the opening part of the show, just a lot of guys that have positives from tonight.
J-Coop was just behind him and had a real weird race because he was actually up there early on and then had this lull in the middle. We were joking in the press box. It was as if... So he was... early on, he was behind Prado and just could not do anything with Prado. Oh, I think at one point Prado even passed him back. And it was as if facing the immovable object of Jorge Prado just broke him because he just started fading backwards. It really, those two things went hand in hand. But he rebounded at the end and made some positions up. And I think 7th is fine, but it's a Justin Cooper finish where it's not spectacular, very little to say about it. It doesn't move the needle, which I don't believe is ideal for him at this stage in his career. He needs to move the needle.
Yeah. No, agreed.
Justin Hill was 8th, which I don't think... I mean, I was going to say I don't think anyone would have had him down for a top 10 at A1, but then it was always possible. It's always possible with Justin Hill, and he has openly said that he was trying this year. But still, that's impressive. How long it lasts, I don't know, but it's impressive.
I was mostly impressed, though, coming into it. I mean, I picked him for my fantasy team this week because I've seen him ride a bit this last week because he rides with the AO guys. I've been out with them a couple times. Like, Justin has looked really good. And he keeps keeps saying, I'm taking this really seriously, which kind of makes me laugh every time he says it. I'm like, okay. Again, you forget just like how much there was some decent hype when he was originally, at JGR, like how good he was the couple of races he did on a 450. Talent's there, of course. So I was not terribly shocked to see that out of him. How does it carry the rest of the season? We'll see. One thing I was super impressed with is his battle with Prado. There was a rhythm lane. I thought he was going to die at the beginning of the rhythm lane, and he kind of gathered it back up and just still, like somebody of kind of his era, I'm like, oh, they give up a little easy when things go wrong in the race. And I watched him nearly commit suicide in a rhythm lane and basically just get aggressive and finish it out and get Prado immediately, like within another corner, where he could have very easily just like checked up and, tried to recoup himself. He just went for it.
Yeah, I think that says a lot about where he's at. Plessinger was 9th, which is fairly anonymous, but he started 17th. So similar to Webb, the result maybe doesn't gather attention, but the progress is deserving of some props. He was just
possibly the most quiet ride of the night out of anybody. I had to double check the scoring sheet at the end.
But I don't think that we panic. Like I say, the progress means positivity. Progress equals positivity. He was just ahead of Malcolm Stewart, and Malcolm came in healthy with a full off season. He was very vocal about the fact that this is so much better than last year. I'm concerned that the violent heat race crash will take some wind out of his sails and maybe knock him back into conservative mode, got to make all of the races mode, which is where he was last year. Because the heat race, before the crash, he was certainly more aggressive, more willing than I saw him at any point last year. So I just hope that mantra maintains and doesn't disappear as he kind of faces potential injury straight in the face.
I was still a little impressed on the result from him because I was right where he crashed on the floor. It was violent as hell, and he was down for a while and was struggling when they finally got him off the track. Like, it was definitely Definitely a stinger. Definitely hit him hard. I kind of when I saw that, I was like, man, yeah, he'll make it through the LCQ. But then I was like, in the main, I thought he would be just cruising around in 15th or 16th or something. So still, the main was better than I thought for as violent as the heat race crash was. But I agree with you. Hopefully, it doesn't reset his mentality for the next couple rounds.
He will take some days off this week, so he is obviously beaten up. Like, this isn't a situation where he's fine. He is beaten up. We did Hunter and Jett, so no need to go back to that well. Let's jump down to Jorge Prado. And I have to say, this was a million times better than I imagined. Just a couple of weeks on the bike all winter. It was going to be tough even with a full off season. Yes, he got good starts, which is fairly expected with Prado. But the heat race especially, for him to get passed by Chase and then just stay stable in second, it's unbelievable. I just kept waiting for, I can't remember exactly who was in that heat, but I kept waiting for the riders behind to cut into his gap. And they just didn't. Like, Prado was just riding around and looked like he belonged in that group. So that in itself made the event a win, I do believe. And then similar early in the main event, yes, his whoops need a lot of work, but he looked racy. He looked good. Like, whatever expectations I had before Anaheim won, those have now gone up because I saw potential, I saw speed, I saw ability, I saw all of the ingredients that are needed to be successful in Supercross. Despite the fact that actually that was the worst result of his Supercross career.
I will say he is definitely the immovable force. He is very difficult to pass. Just line selection. Something about Supercross, he checks guys up a lot, and he kills a lot of guys' momentum in corners because I notice when he battles, he doesn't just flow the top a lot. He'll kind of like square up and check up
he
guys.
steers with the rear a lot, but I swear, like, I feel like that's new. Like, I don't feel like that was happening before.
Yeah, that's a very Cowie DNA thing, and I shot a bunch of video of him on the Ford. Every corner he comes out of, like if there was multiple ruts, he would just rear steer the top of the rear of the bike over everything. So he's constantly pivoting a lot off the corners, which I will say there's one thing that's it's going to take time. I think we'll see a lot of gains over the opening couple West Coast rounds. Because of the lack of prep, because of the fact he's never raced East, because he's rear steering everywhere, because the main, when it broke down, things got a little more loose. I'm a little scared for the first couple East Coast races when we got some serious ruts. I think that'll kind of reset. Like, I think we'll see a lot of progress. I'm a little worried the first couple East might kind of, rattle him a little bit just based off a couple of little things I saw. I think there'll be another mid-season adjustment period for him potentially. But overall, one thing that stuck out to me between the starts, great sprint pace, just not really being afraid of who he's racing, just, again, being an immovable force. Something that you said in the previous show is, like, I do think the Triple Crowns, I think he's got a great opportunity to do well at the Triple Crowns. I still stand by what I said beginning of the season, like, does not win a main this year. I don't know if he podiums a traditional main. I definitely have some hopes on the Triple Crowns, though.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and that's going to be very exciting. But no, good for him. Like, honestly, very impressed. And to give you some context, in talking to people close to him, the goal was they hoped for 8 to 12. That was a hope, not a we need to be there. That was a optimistically we might be 8 to 12. So I believe he surprised everyone. And you know what? Because he's a world champion and because he's used to winning, I know he was pissed after the race. In interviews, he didn't say that, but he was pissed. Off record, he was pissed, and he wants more, and he was already processing where the weaknesses lied.
The main, I will say, he was the only guy that went to jump line the very first lap. We definitely have to learn some whoops a little bit more.
I saw him skimming. No, different. Like, he was very
defaulted back because he went jump line first lap.
Yeah, he was very experimental. We were railing the berm and then going all the way down the left side.
Were you on the bike with him?
And then we were going. We were squaring off as tight as you can and coming tight down the right side.
Does Chase know about this?
We discussed. No, I say we. Just I don't know why I said we.
But also with Jorge, we went from them to we. I was like,
me and Jorge aren't that tight. But he was like, yeah, he was moving around a lot in the whoops, just trying to find an area that worked for him. But he was skimming.
One other thing I'll say on the Prado thing is I was really stoked to see like fan reaction when he's in battles, the cheering, the opening ceremonies, response to him, autograph line, etc. Just a few things. He's just such a nice addition to our series. Like he has such a good personality, and I always feel for anybody that's like in a sense the blanket term it, the Euro, the MXGP guy, even the Aussies are
Like
MXGP
me.
can come here. Yeah, like you. Just trying to find that acceptance.
Yep.
And Jorge seems to have it. Maybe you should take some lessons from him, Lewis.
Yep. Maybe I should. Do you want to do what you wanted to do about the lower half of the field, or do you want to just move to 250s because we are going long?
Yeah, just one blanket comment. It's just a very weird group. Would you agree for the A1 back of the pack? No offense to them, like your Oldenburgs, your Harrisons, Norin.
Well, I think Oldenburg doesn't belong in that list.
I kind of gave him some slack because late season changed to the beta. I was just thinking like opening round, I didn't expect him in the main. I just thought it would take a couple rounds. He actually looked great on it, by the way. Yeah, just a little bit of an odder group than I thought. Nichols not making it's a little disappointing. It's interesting. Jay Coop and Nichols winning 250s, titles in the same year, and the career trajectory since then. I'm definitely a little concerned on the Colt side of things right now. It's just the career is just I don't know where we're at anymore.
Yeah, when Chiz makes a main and Colt doesn't, that's not a good look. But hey ho, on to 250s. Unless you have another 450 point.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, 250s. Let's go.
I'm just going to pull up the 250s, but before I do that, I forgot to mention that Jorge Prado is now a Fox Racing rider, and he actually had the best look at Anaheim 1 by far. I love the pink. I feel like pink is coming back, and it looks good. With a rich heritage and deep racing DNA, Fox Racing has been at the forefront of motocross for 50 years. They empower the world's best athletes like Jorge Prado, Ken Roczen, Levi Kitchen, and Joe Shimoda to chase their dreams. With their gear, dreamers become champions. They honor the past while inventing tomorrow, pushing the limits of racewear and protection, because at Fox, change is the only constant. Shop Fox's new elevated future limited edition collection by visiting foxracing.com. Thank you to Fox, DeCal Works, and Yoshimura for their support of the podcast. No one had Joe Shimoda winning Anaheim 1, but I think the reason for that is because everyone had Hayden Deegan winning Anaheim 1. But let me ask you this. Although we all had Hayden Deegan winning Anaheim 1, I feel like none of us were talking about Joe Shimoda as the second place guy or even the third place guy. He was written off across the board.
I mean, we've just been so lost, especially early in the season. Like Joe's continuously started season slow, gets it together. I mean, yeah, like when I look at this result sheet here, like Beaumer and Smith's results, 100% on point. Like we talked very highly of them preseason. Ryder D's was still a little better than I actually expected. But like those guys, all there makes sense. Like Joe, I hate to say it, I thought Joe would be like fifth place at the opening round. It is interesting, just the contrast between him and the 450 guy seems very settled with the bike. Made off-season changes, they actually seem to be effective. I've been trying to think about this before we started this, like how much emphasis I put into this result, but that's pretty impressive for Joe. I just was very caught off guard.
Well, now the question is this. So every other year, he has started slowly and built up. Is this actually him starting slow and that trend will continue? Like he will only get better? Will that trend flip? And now that he has started well, he will go backwards? Where does this go from here? Because honestly, I have no idea. Absolutely no idea.
Definitely very different. Like I said, bike-wise, I know after Paris, he was completely lost, and then they nailed it right after that, and he's had a very settled December, which is very unusual because Joe seems to, when I talk to guys, be tinkering a lot. So that's very different. Again, the move, it's hard for me. I don't think the trend continues where he gets better. I think he's starting well. Not to say he can't improve across the season, but I don't know. There's definitely the worrying, does it go the other way? Do we start well and go backwards? Let me ask you this. Is Joe the second most likely for the title behind Hayden after that performance?
Well, the people at home will be very surprised at you saying that. Or not surprised, but I do. Now we're on YouTube, so if you're not watching this, we have pop-ups with like topics, etc. I write them and I'm controlling them. ML cannot see what's on the screen.
That's what's on the screen.
I just put up a pop-up that I wrote that says, is Julian Beaumer the title threat? Because I do share that question with you of, I don't know if it's Joe that's going to challenge Hayden despite what we saw at Anaheim 1. Yeah. I do believe that it's Juju who is actually better, faster, and more capable. Also more capable to go toe-to-toe with Deegan and all of the drama that comes with that.
Yeah. It's interesting because Juju's from his era of amateurs. I don't know, Juju's got kind of his own confidence to him. I mean, the fur coat thing at A1 was a little over the top, but I also get it in the same breath. I was very impressed with him overall. Like I said, everything just seems to be clicking all of a sudden opposite him for Red Bull KTM for that group. It's tough. I was sitting here trying to figure that out. Is it Julian or Joe? I do lean a little bit more Julian just because, man, Joe, it was a great sampling, but I need to see more over another race or two.
Well, the one string that Joe has to his bow is the fact that he does have Yoshimura attached to his bike, and that will propel him to more great starts and undoubtedly more main event wins. I say that with some trepidation, but sure, let's run with it. Yoshimura, of course, defines excellence. You see them even on Tim Geiser in Europe, who will enter MXGP as a heavy title favourite there with Jeffrey Hurling's injury. So Yoshimura are worldwide and winning everywhere you look, and we're stoked to have them on board on the post-race show. It is funny because that was Juju's first podium. But the landscape changed so drastically that it was almost a disappointment that it wasn't his first win. Because I certainly felt like he was capable of that. And early on, I did believe that he was going to pass Joe and win. But around the halfway point, it seemed that he took stock of the situation and was almost like, no, this is rare air for me. I've never had a podium. I need to just take second, leave here with this, and then we can build from here. But in mentioning that after the race to him, he did say he is here to win a championship. So the expectations and the stance is clear. Do you think he can?
Yes.
Do you think he can without help?
That's tough. I mean, even with the opening round, like percentage pie, Hayden is such the title favorite. It would take more bad races, something else happening. I'm still of the full belief this is Deegan's title. There will be challengers, but this is Deegan's title.
I'm interested. I believe this is the last year of Juju's contract.
Yes.
I feel like he could become quite a hot property because I think he could. I think he could be the big 250 mover and shaker in silly season. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot interesting there with the KTM group as a whole in the 250s because like their main 250 prospects are all up this year, I believe. Cochran's contract's up, Ryder D's
everyone's up. 450s, 250s, and not, just to be clear, these contracts were done a long time ago. So it's a coincidence with the financial troubles, but everyone American-wise is up. And even in Europe, Hurling's is up, Adamo's up, I believe.
Is Tom's up?
Tom's up.
Even though extension, because he won the title, they didn't opt into his 450 deal.
Well,
yet.
okay, maybe there's that, but as far as the base contract that was initially signed, unless it's been already extended.
Then RJ's got extended.
Oh yeah, RJ's is the only one who's not. But Malcolm, Barsha, Plessinger.
AP, because it was the one Chase has an option in his contract.
Yeah, but he's up.
His base of his contract is up. Definitely interesting. I'm curious. Yeah, Juju's in kind of the driver's seat going forward with his career. I'm very curious to see where that goes. It's just interesting where he came. Like, again, he didn't come out of nowhere. I've seen the kid at amateurs. Like, some people act like he really came out of nowhere. The kid's raced amateurs his whole career, has been a name, but was just never dominant. And how quickly he spun that from that performance in Futures 2 years ago to now being sitting here and we're like, this guy's title contender. He's going to be one of the hottest properties next year. Like, it's just big for him. It's really cool. I also enjoy just like some of the stuff they're doing with him media wise. I like that One Industry's picked him kind of as their marquee, guy back into the sport. Some of that stuff's been pretty cool.
I was very impressed that Jordan managed to reclaim a podium spot after his crash because he was quite a way back. It was going to be tough to do. But then in the same breath, the riders he had to work by, Jordan should handle those guys easily. This is where we are now going to enter a very difficult situation with 250 West, because the results, it's going to be hard to celebrate results because there's always going to be the asterisk of, well, look at the field. Hayden coming from last to fifth. If he was in the East Coast, that isn't happening. It's just not. So we are in a very weird position now. And almost it's unfair to guys like Juju and Joe and Jordan and Garrett because there are no excuses. This is the perfect setup to perform and achieve the very highest of your goals. Aside from the Hayden factor, this is it. So when they do that, it's not going to be a case of, wow, they did it. I think there will be a case of, well, you should have done it. Look at the field.
I had this conversation, and I know it's tough if you're on your coast, your belief that you're racing good guys. I had this conversation with a few 250 West guys, like mid-pack on. They were like, our field's really deep. And I'm like, I disagree. East, I think minus, before we had Levi bail out, I'm like, yeah, I think the top five is super gnarly on both coasts. I think your top five guys, when you, like I said, you include, if you go like Joe, Julian, Jordan, Hayden, Levi, as your top five on West, I'm like, that's very strong. And then after that, I see a lot more drop off. East has a deeper, like 6th to 15th, 6th to 20th, in my opinion. So the bright side, like what's going to be tough for a Joe or a Julian is like what happened to Hayden last night is bad races. Any of those guys we're talking about in that top 3 or 4 conversation should be able to come through this field a lot easier. So those bad nights may not affect some of those guys as much.
Just to get excited for East Coast, Anstey, Brown, Bennick, Thrasher, Kitchen, McAdoo, Hammaker, Masterpool, Hymas, Hampshire, Vial, Faulkner, Cochrane, Voland. That is effectively a showdown. That is that level of field. So bring on Tampa, is all I can say, because that is going to be ridiculous. We could end up East Coast. We could have a different winner every single round.
Yeah. How about the Levi situation? I'm still extremely confused because, like, RJ kind of threw out the comment he heard he was switching 2 weeks ago. I saw Levi. I'll just say this. I saw him on Saturday morning, and I don't know if I'm overreading into something. I know he's sick and weak. I saw him get out of a side-by-side and, like, kind of limping into the rig, and I was like, is there something else going on here? I don't know what the deal is.
Well, I didn't see that, so I don't know about that, but I don't see why there would... I mean, I think RJ was just trying to join the fun game of back and forth on social media because we know he also wants to play that. He's also got that itch to him. So I believe he was just trying to engage in a little fun and stir the pot a little bit. I don't believe there is any reason to suspect fishy business here.
Yeah, I'd say fishy, just combo. Like maybe, like I said last time, I'm like, okay, maybe we got dinged a little bit the last couple weeks. Not to say the illness part, like add the illness in. It was just like, okay, clearly this sucks. Like I said, I'm not saying I didn't hear anything. I'm just saying what I physically saw. I'm like, okay, maybe he's dinged up and he's sick, and they just sat down. It's like, well, this is a great start to the year. F this.
Yeah, I mean, so we expect Drew Adams to come in this weekend. So that will help the West Coast as well. Add another fascinating story. But it maybe shines a little bit of a light on why the coasts are not needed, that both Pro Circuit and Star will have 4 riders each on the East Coast. Yeah. Like, because at that point, it makes more jobs. We're not splitting riders up at this point. We've just got everyone on the East Coast.
Well, I mean, here's the default. You can say if we went 250 coast all the way around, Star is not hiring 7 guys. Mitch is not hiring 6. It would be less. True. I mean, they would go 4 for a lot of them. KTM Group really wouldn't change to be 2. However, I will say, and I've said this for a while, like with the move away from linear television and like the time block being, we have to fit in as big of a deal anymore. There is a part of me, like you look at other major motorsports that have 3 class structures, take Formula One, take NASCAR, things like that. I would love to see eventually someday, yes, 250s move to some sort of a full format and have a junior version of it in some shape or form below it or something of that nature. I mean, when you see this, like, I'm already seeing her saying the same thing. I'm so excited for the showdowns. I want to see the showdowns. I'm stoked we have 3 of them. I know teams I talk to, they're pissed that there's 3 of them. I'm fucking stoked for them.
Yeah, when is the first one?
It's fairly early in the season. Is it after?
I know Indy is one, but I don't know if that's the first one.
I feel like Indy might be the first one because the next one is like Philly or Pittsburgh. I can't remember if it's. I keep getting it backwards. It's
Yeah,
Indy,
maybe it is Indy
Philly or
then.
Pittsburgh, and then the last one, of course, is Denver.
Tip of the hat to Ryder D, who actually I have a special place in my heart for because I really want to see him do well this year. Not really sure why, but for some reason, his story, his position in the sport has appealed to my better nature, and I would like to see him do well. And I feel like we saw significant progress. Again, despite the weakness of the field, you could see in his riding that he was significantly better, and a podium is certainly coming at some point. Maybe it's possible to dream of a win. Maybe that's a bit too far, but a podium is a certainty. And this was his first top 5. So I feel like Juju's first podium and Ryder D's first top 5 are both being overlooked by everyone. So just 2 milestones.
Yeah.
What do we want to say about Hayden? Other than, I guess, he is the best guy and all will be normal here soon?
Basically,
Yep.
nothing.
Okay, that's good.
Nothing to worry about. No red flags. Nothing. Great ride. Just had a bad first to second corner incident. Showed why he has the speed, because I think from the point he got up, even going through the pack, his actual physical gap to Joe barely changed during the race, even though he was coming through the field. So.
Shock did well in 6th place. Bourdon also did well in 7th. Cole Davies. I don't actually know what happened to Cole Davies early in the main event.
It wasn't the Hayden thing,
No.
but it was shortly after. He also was coming back from basically dead last.
Yeah, he was 20th at the end of lap 1. So for him to get to 8th in his rookie race, that was extremely impressive. Second in the heat race. He is good. I have sources at Star, and he's been very good all off-season. One of the better Star 250 riders. So when he gets on the podium, which is coming, don't be surprised because he will do that. That is almost like the minimum expectation of how good he has been this off-season.
Well, part of this quick move from we're doing futures to we're doing East Coast to F it, we're going West Coast is probably something I've been hearing for a while that, hey, on most days, he's like the second best guy quite often. Like he is right there tip to tip for best lap times of the day. And I mean, I asked somebody on the team once when there was some other stuff moving around. I said, hey, I heard you're moving Cole up and I heard he's running about this pace. And they were like, yeah, that's pretty much exactly what's happening.
To circle back to a previous point I made, I do believe that this is very much a make or break season for Marchbanks now. Because with this field, I mean, it kind of was anyway, but now with this field, if Marchbanks isn't a consistent podium guy, there's not really a defense. Like, he needs to capitalize on this. And truth be told, it was a quiet A1 where I didn't really see much to be excited about. But to be honest with you, and to be quite frank, my entire life, have never really got the Marchbanks hype. I've never been there. So maybe that's also me looking at it from a tainted perspective.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I asked him on the pre-race press conference on Friday. I basically posed him like, hey, you're back at PC. Great there. I know you're excited. But I'm like, it's very weird. I said, everybody on your team basically has long-term deals. It's a very full team, Drew, coming in. Like, you're on a 1-year deal. Do you feel a lot of pressure? Like, this is make or break for you? And he just kind of skirted past him. Was like, oh, my preseason was great. I'm really excited, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, Garrett's in a very unusual situation. I get it. If you're him, you've been floating at club for years. You want to show what you can do. You have the opportunity to go back to Mitch. Of course, you say yes. But also, very weird place career-wise because, again, who knows what's going to happen with the KTM group in terms of size of teams next year. You have multiple 250 riders up. Again, like we had talked about with them. Stars the same way, multiple teams. Cowie is kind of already at full, and even if they had a spot, maybe they would go after one of these other guys that'll be available. Garrett, I feel like, is in a very, very weird spot career-wise where may not feel it now, but I feel like it's going to be very, very tough from here on out. Like, I'm very questioning where he'll be, regardless of results, where he'll be come 26.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Funny, another little similar to the Kawasaki 1-2. I wonder when the last time was that we had a podium with only one energy drink. Because Joe and Jordan are energy drinkless. Yeah. That was quite a weird optic.
Yep.
Very weird. And also,
I know they're sponsored, but I gotta say at Fox, like I love seeing a factory guy of Joe's level on the podium, just full matching kit. No blacked out helmets, no Red Bull helmets. I appreciate the money those guys put in the sport, but damn, that was cool to see.
No Yamaha on the podium in either class, which is also, that has happened recently, but that is rare air. Imagine if you had told Star that to start the season, Hayden, Cole, and Moserman would start lap 1 in 19th, 21st, and 22nd.
I saw that's what caught my mind. The first pass after the finish line, they go through the whoops in the sand. I was like, really?
And then to add to that, you've got Eli starting 21st or 22nd himself. So for Star, just not a disastrous start, but I did actually want to point to this. As far as manufacturers go, KTM far and away had the best night across both classes. Every other manufacturer had very inconsistent. They didn't have success in both classes. They had one or the other. KTM were the only manufacturer to have both class glory.
Yeah, KTM great success, and then Gas solid. Ryder D fourth, Barsha 6, so very solid for them. Husky, we have no 250 representation. Talk about Triumph, we have no 450 representation. But yeah, Honda and Yamaha all over the place a little bit.
You know what? With all that's going on at KTM at the moment, that's good for them, and they're killing it in Dakar as well. So
yeah,
look, it's all coming up KTM again. I know that you will have some points you want to raise for 250s. I'm done with 250s, but I know you have more, so you crack on.
Just a couple small notes here. One I'm personally stoked on, of course, Avery Long. Been on Supercross on a KTM for basically 3 weeks. Wasn't even supposed to race Supercross. Rookie one, not a good amateur kid, but not the standout that got a spot. So they took a shot on him to get 12th after being in transfer and heat race, getting punted by Berdone, LCQ, just low prep. Really stoked for the kid. A 12th is a great for rookie. It gets overshadowed, of course, very easy by Davies, and rightfully so. Davies is amazing, but solid rookie there. Parker Ross for Supercross as well. 17th made in the show. Towers for Supercross. Rough day overall. He was happy as riding, but ended up on the ground a lot. 19th. Varize, I had no freaking clue was even racing A1. Kind of showed. He qualified, but he rolled around most of the main. But Josh was in there. Styles was also part of that group coming through the pack, and he was with Cole, but then he had another. He was down, got up to maybe about 11th or 12th, and had another issue. I feel for Styles, just with what happened with Swole and everything swapped around. I know Styles could have used the extra prep time, so seeing him get moved to West Coast with only a couple days before the first race. Little bummed for him. Hopefully, just gets through these first couple okay and is just able to kind of keep building.
Okay. 2 questions to end this Vital MX post-race show. YouTube debut. I am certain, or not certain, in my heart, I believe the San Diego win comes from either Tomac or Chase. Are you on that same wavelength?
Yes.
Okay. And naturally, it will take some time for Hayden to get the red plate because he is 9 points down, maybe 8 points down. How long does that take? Because, realistically...
2 rounds.
2 rounds as in he has it at Anaheim too, or he has it leaving?
He has it at Glendale.
Okay.
He has it leaving A2, shows up at Glendale with it.
Okay, so with that prediction, that means that Joe will be somewhat solid from here on out.
Yeah, I think, again, we just talked about the group behind him. I think on a bad night, Joe and Julian are still 3rd to 5th place guys, even on bad nights. Okay. So I think it'll take at least 2 rounds to get back to points lead, unless one of them just.
And does Jett podium San Diego?
Are
we concerned about his starts as well? We never raised that, but that was also. I felt like his drive out of the gate was good every time, but whenever it came time to hook a gear, he just got swallowed up, which actually was very similar to what Chase was dealing with last year.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll give it another race just because he was on such a string for so long. And I get it, like, just overall, like we talk about starts a lot of his confidence. I don't think he's in the most confident place. And like I said, maybe just a little flustered at the moment. I'll give it to him for another race or two. If we get bad starts to the next race, let's raise the red flag and discuss. But right now, me and you talked about this a lot. I think a lot of starts is confidence as well. And if you don't feel like you're going to be up there, you don't get yourself up there sometimes.
Yep, and this is again why Anaheim 1 was huge for both Chase and Eli, because I feel like this will snowball now. Thank you to DeCal Works, Yoshimura, and Fox Racing for their support of the Vital MX post-race show. Thank you to everyone who has listened or watched this episode, this post-Anaheim 1 episode. Apologies for the annoyingness of my voice. I was very, very, very sick, and I'm still not exactly great. So, bunged up, hence why I sound annoying. Stick with us next week. Fingers crossed, I will sound more normal, although that will still infuriate so many of you. But what can you do but try? We will be back in 7 days, though, to discuss San Diego Round 2 of Monster Energy AMA Supercross. So we will see you then.